Now, um, going just back to the lockdown, one of my questions is, was there any, did the lockdown give you any opportunity to do any additional training that you couldn't have done before?
Yes.
Okay, what training was that?
We made up our own training. We were recognizing we were very, very short-staffed. It's probably all the institutions, the maximums were very short-staffed. We were running at about a 40-50% vacancy rate at that time. And what was happening is we were having so many brand new officers. I think at one point, 35% to 50% of our officer staff was brand new within 1 year. And we noticed that they weren't following policy. They weren't doing their jobs correctly, even though they went through 8 weeks of an academy and 2 weeks of on-the-job training before they even came to us. We just noticed that I had asked my supervisor Percy to give me some training lieutenants at one point. I was trying to brainstorm on how I can get the staff up to par on where they should be. Instead of having to go through all these staff disciplines and end up firing people, there had to be a better way. So we used the opportunity of the lockdown because we didn't need as many staff running the institution. We used that opportunity to come up with some training, basic security training that they all would have received, but specific to Columbia and how they do their job. We
Okay,
did train
and
everybody.
excuse me, when you came to become the warden of Columbia, were there any other female wardens of a maximum security institution at that time?
No,
Okay. Were there when you became the warden, was there a let's say any priorities that you were given to address first?
yes, when I was appointed, before I actually went to Columbia, I met with Mr. Percy, and he gave me a list of priorities that he wanted me to take care of.
Do you know where those priorities came, if he wrote them or somebody else wrote them?
He did them with, I believe Mr. Schlockert had helped craft those.
Okay. And what were those priorities, generally speaking?
Um, there was a lot. Let me think.
Well, let me retract that question. Was there any security priorities on that list?
There was a plan to build a new part of a segregation building. So in security wise, we had to figure out how to move all these inmates out of the institution and clear our segregation building. Um, yeah, that was one security. Let me think what else.
Was security on the top three issues that you had to address?
I'm going to object at this point. The security that was dictated by her or to her by a different administration is not relevant to this hearing.
I think so. I agree with that. Let's move on.
Well, not on the principle, on the principle that a new secretary comes in and he has no knowledge of anything that happens and it's a clean tabula rasa, but that's not the case for my client. So it's the same thing for Miss Fesahai, apparently, that she gets a clean slate, but my client doesn't. So,
That's the nature of being a civil service employee from administration to administration. You are responsible over all the years, and the new administration comes in and they're new.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, then we release all the prisoners as soon as Secretary Carr comes in. How about all the policies? Do we write all new ones when Secretary Carr comes
The
in?
point is that we're trying to get to the issues in here.
No, the point is that you're assuming that if, and we've got that clear, that for Secretary Carr, there's one rule that if he comes in, that he's not responsible to learn or do anything, and he's not responsible for any prior acts. But apparently, there's a different rule for my client. But again, you just said that a new person comes in, and it's the nature of civil service, then they're not responsible for
The
anything
issue
that
is
happens
not whether
prior to them
Secretary
being there or
Carr,
even aware of it.
the
And
issue is
that
not,
simply isn't the
excuse me,
law, let alone even the practice or
excuse me,
anything close to it
Mr.
for an
Cross,
administrator or a secretary
Mr.
at
Cross,
all.
Mr. Cross, the issue is not whether Secretary Carr is knowledgeable and good for this job and knows what he's doing, or if anything those others are. The issue is, do you have proof that Miss Novak was treated differently by the Secretary Carr and the people who reported to him because of her sex? It may not be fair. It may not be that they were terrific administrators. I don't know. But the issue that I'm looking at is whether or not they, the decision makers in this case, treated her differently than they treated other similarly situated males. That's what I'm looking for. So make that case. And that's what I want to hear
Right.
about.
Well, so that's the macro question, but the micro question that we're actually addressing here right now, because he said this wasn't relevant, and then you made a statement on the record saying that once that's the nature of government service, and once you come in, all you have no responsibility for any prior acts. That's
You
the
may have
question that I'm.
responsibility, but the
Excuse me.
responsibility is to the
I'm
governor,
talking. It's
to
absolutely
elected
inappropriate for you
officials,
to
to the
interrupt me
public.
when I'm talking and trying to make my record here. So are you going to allow me to make my record or something else?
Make it quick, please.
Okay. So again, what the statement that you put on the record just now is unequivocal and clear that you believe, without having any evidence in the record, you've had, this is another sky is green moment, Judge, because Mr. Mullenbach has said on the record time and time again, and apparently you believe it without having any facts in the record, that from one secretary to the other, there is absolutely no continuation, and that Mr. Carr has no way of knowing and is not responsible for knowing anything that happened before he came in there. You said that. But
I'm
that's not
saying
the
that the
standard that
issue
they're
that I
applying
care
to my
about,
client at all.
again, the issue is not this. This is not the issue. We are wasting time on an issue that is not the relevant issue in this case. The issue is whether or not Secretary Carr's administration and the people that made the decision about Ms. Novak regarding this prison escape made decisions different for her than they would have made for a male warden.
Hey, Judge,
That's it.
what's the caption of this case?
I know what the caption is, and I'm telling you what my ruling is, and it's not going to change just because I know the case caption.
Right, and you
So-
know also WIFA doesn't. It's not Sue Novak versus Mr. Carr, is it?
It is generally that I'm looking at people. When I
It's
have
not,
to
no,
make
you're not
decisions,
looking at people, Judge.
I am
That's
looking at
another
people.
problem.
Mr.
Absolutely
Cross,
not
you
looking
know
at
the law.
people. It is
Okay.
the employer. That's
Mr.
what
Cross.
the law is, Judge. You're looking at the employer's decisions.
I'm looking at the decision makers' decisions. So you know the law. I've made my ruling. You live with it. And if you don't like it, again, you have a full record now, and you can go on to your heart's content about how terribly unfair and wrong I am. That's fine. But right now, you follow my rule, and let's focus on this issue of what evidence you have regarding a difference in treatment by the decision makers in this matter based on relevant comparatives to Ms. Carr or to Ms. Novak. Go ahead.
Okay, so when you became a warden, Miss Novak, did you were you responsible for any of the actions that your predecessors did?
Yes.
Okay, like the installation of the razor wire fence on the inside, right?
The stun fence, yes.
I'm going to object and ask to strike that calls for a legal conclusion.
In what sense does that call for a legal conclusion?
I don't even understand that objection, Mr. Mullenbach.
Well, because that's part of what the allegations are. And she's essentially stating that we've held her to a different standard because she was responsible for the male wardens. And that was the previous testimony, that there was male wardens that were here, and she's responsible for those. So I would argue that that calls for a legal conclusion.
Okay, I don't know. I'm interested in what did the decision maker, Secretary Carr, Ms. Fazahaya, or anybody else who made a decision about Ms. Novak, what did they think and how did they treat her compared to other people comparable? And can you show a difference based on sex? That's all I care about, because that's all that's in this case.
Okay, so let's talk about other wardens for a little bit here. Are you aware of any other wardens ever being investigated for an escape?
No,
And I will want to be clear, at a medium or maximum security institution.
no.
Okay. So in your, and again, are you aware of any other escapes that have occurred at a medium or maximum security institution?
Yes,
Okay, and those wardens would have been men, right?
yes.
Okay. And do you know whether any of those male wardens who had escapes under their tenure were investigated?
I don't believe so. I know they weren't disciplined or put out on leave.
Okay. Now, I guess moving forward, how did you get the administrative leave letter for yourself?
I got a phone call from Magda Fesahaya telling me that she was placing me on administrative leave. And that Christy Preston, head of internal affairs, who was already at Columbia, was going to come and give it to me and walk me out.
Okay, did that happen?
Yes,
Did she, Ms. Fesahai, say anything else at that time?
no, I don't believe so.
Did you ask her why you were being put on administrative leave?
Yes,
Okay, and did she tell you?
no, no.
Okay,
She said it was in the letter.
okay. Did you learn from the letter why you were being put on administrative leave?
Yeah, there's always, like I said, there's always some explanation. I think if I remember right, it was very vague. I didn't have specifics at that point.
Okay. What about the security director? When, if at all, did you learn that the security director was put on administrative leave?
They did it simultaneously. All our offices are pretty close, and they called each one of us separately, kind of did it at the same time. They calculated it so that we would, we wouldn't pass each other. They'd walk us out at different intervals, all within the same, hour, half hour. So I didn't learn about it until I was on my way home.
Okay. And did they tell you, did Mr. Gusky tell you?
Yes,
Okay. And Mr. Weber too?
yes.
Okay. So when did you first learn of that you were going to be interviewed by Internal Affairs?
It was maybe, I'd be guessing, a couple days after the escape. I received a notice that I would be interviewed as a witness.
Okay.
That was before my administrative leave.
Okay, but that was in conjunction with that was before the, so that was the only active investigations that you knew at that point were into the line employees. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And were they asking you about the line employees then?
I'm sorry, I can't remember that first interview, what they asked me. I don't remember.
So Judge, this is page 157 of the packet. It's R12, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry. We're on response exhibit 12, and what page did you say?
Now I'm on 100, well, let's just start with the first page there, which is 157. That's a 4 down, I think. It says employee investigative reports, investigative interview. It's Novak's first. 15807C. That's it.
All right, go ahead, please.
Do you recognize this document, Ms. Novak?
Yes.
Have you seen this document before?
Not this specific one.
Okay. But this document, what is this document if you know?
Yes, this is, I'm the interviewee as a subject, and this is an investigation. I don't know the official title, but it's the form that you put your interview on for an investigation.
Okay. So, and this is your first interview on May 28th?
No,
Okay.
no,
So
this,
you were,
I'm the subject here. This was, a month after.
so you had given an initial statement to them where you were the witness but not the subject, and that's not the, so this is your second one. Is that fair to say?
It's probably my third or fourth. I had at least, I want to say I had 2 interviews as a witness. And then I was a subject. The same day I think I was a subject, I was placed out on leave. And then I had, I think, 2 more. I might have had a total of 4 interviews. I'm trying to remember.
Okay. So, does this, I mean, okay, do we have enough, can we show this to the document to the witness? Is there any objection to that?
I have no objection to that.
Okay.
This document's been admitted, and I don't know what a question you have. Where do you want to go?
I lost the page, just 1 second. Okay, so this is on here, page 159. So 2 more down. And the question I'm looking at is Q28, answer 28, at the bottom of that page.
All right, I've got question 28, and it goes on to the next page from 159 to 160 is what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And it goes
Okay.
from 159, yes, over to 160. You got it.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, do you see this? It's the question and answer about the incident commander.
Yes.
Okay. Is the incident commander, does that, because the first thing I says is that says, you're becoming the incident commander when you arrive. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it says that there was an incident commander prior to you arriving. And then I see there it says it would have been Captain Boudry at the time of the incident. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And Captain Boudry, he was the highest ranking employee at that time during the escape.
At the time of the escape, yes.
Okay. And then then I want to go up to your answer here in A28, and at the top of that page it says, so the majority of that whole day was spent with law enforcement, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but a lot of this stuff was taking place in my office as the command post. Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what that means?
We've had incident command training, and anytime there's an incident, you set up a command post. And generally, the incident commander will be there along with the staff that I designate, or whoever the commander is designates they need in that location. So yeah, during this incident, that command post was in my office. And I had Columbia County, lots of deputies there. I had the security director and the deputy warden as we were briefing them, who the inmates were, some of their visit lists, you know, all the things that they needed to find these guys and to conduct their investigation.
Okay.
We were
And
collaborating. Mhm.
just for us that don't know, why would the Department of Corrections have to involve the Columbia County Sheriff's Office with regard to this escape?
Well, because it's a crime to escape, but more importantly, the apprehension, we need them for the apprehension of the inmates.
Okay.
They put out their warrants, they get their guys going, they've got the communication to put out bulletins. Yeah, we needed them.
Okay, so there's some talk about the proper notification being necessary for warrants to go out. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. But who was actually issuing the warrants? Was it the sheriff's department or somebody else?
I think electronic monitoring unit does it, but Columbia County also did it right away, right? When they got the names, they put out their warrants to apprehend.
Okay. And then I also want to understand, it says, I spent the majority of that whole day was spent with law enforcement. Do you see that part?
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means I spent probably at least 10 hours that day in on and off communication. I always had a couple of the deputies in my office. They were telling me their reports from the field, sightings of these guys, information they were getting, and we were also sharing information that we were receiving on our end to them, kind of a collaborative effort to try to get them apprehended.
Okay, and but does and do I understand this means that your primary activity there is to confer and coordinate with law enforcement officers during the escape?
Yes, I felt it was. I would be the one to authorize what information can be disclosed to law enforcement and what can't. Giving them evidence that they needed so they could locate the inmates.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to do everything I could to get these guys back into custody before maybe something bad happened or they committed another crime. We were working hard.
Well, and so that's part of what I want to understand. Did you get any assistance from, let's say the Madison?
To help me do this? No.
Okay. Did they send Mr. Fuchs there at any time?
Yes, I think it was Magda told me he was coming. And he showed up. He wasn't in the command post. He was in a separate room. I guess taking calls from DAI administration from Magda. Mr. Fuchs would knock on my door and every once in a while and say, Magda wants to know this, administration wants to know this. So I was filling him with information that he would give back to them.
Okay. Did it appear from that Miss Fesahai was contacting Mr. Fuchs rather than you?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I didn't have time to be on the phone with anyone, frankly.
Can you
This-
explain why not?
Because I had the deputies there. We were giving information. I mean, I gave authorization to have an employee's car searched. There was a lot of things going on, which allowed us, as we worked together, to be able to track these guys. I mean, we were getting somewhere. I mean, it was beneficial.
Okay.